You think you know the story? A spoiled princess, a magical frog, a lost golden ball, and a kiss that breaks an enchantment, transforming the slimy amphibian into a handsome prince. It's a whimsical fairy tale about inner beauty and keeping promises. But what if I told you that the narrative we know as the Frog Prince is far older and infinitely more profound than a mere lesson in manners or true love? What if it's a story that has whispered through the mists of human history for over 5,500 years? A surprising echo from a time when shapeshifting was not just fantasy, but a deeply held spiritual belief, and the boundary between the human and animal worlds was permeable. Because buried beneath this seemingly simple fable lies a profound secret, a narrative passed down by word of mouth through millennia, a story of ancient animal totems, of sacred springs, of spiritual contracts, and something far more transformative than just a princess's kiss. Once you hear the truth behind the princess and the enchanted amphibian, you'll never see it the same way again. Welcome back, Darklings. Before we unearth the secrets of this enduring narrative, let's begin with the most well-known version of the tale. But listen closely, because hidden in this familiar story are whispers of something far more ancient, far more visceral, waiting to be rediscovered. Every detail, every familiar phrase, holds a deeper, more unsettling resonance. Once upon a time, in a grand kingdom, there lived a young princess, beautiful, but rather proud and accustomed to getting her own way. Her favourite possession was a golden ball which she loved to play with, tossing it high into the air. One sunny afternoon, while playing by an ancient, deep well in the palace gardens, she tossed her golden ball too high, and it tumbled down, into the dark, murky water. The princess wept, inconsolable at the loss of her precious toy. Suddenly, a voice croaked from the water. From the depths emerged a large green frog, its eyes gleaming. "Why do you weep, princess?" it asked, in a surprisingly clear voice. The princess explained her plight, and the frog offered to retrieve her ball, but only if she promised him 3 things: to let him be her companion, to eat from her golden plate, and to sleep in her royal bed. Disgusted by the thought of a slimy frog, but desperate for her ball, the princess readily promised, secretly intending to break her word. The frog dove into the well and quickly returned with the golden ball. The princess, overjoyed, snatched her toy and immediately ran back to the palace, forgetting all about her promise. But the next day, as she sat down to dinner, there came a knock at the door. "Princess, open the door. Do you not remember your promise?" And there, to her horror, was the frog. Her father, the wise king, hearing her explanation, sternly reminded her of the sanctity of a promise, especially one made to save herself. Reluctantly, the princess allowed the frog inside. The frog hopped beside her, ate from her golden plate, and that night demanded to sleep in her bed. Repulsed, the princess refused, but her father insisted. The princess, filled with disgust and anger, snatched up the frog and, in a fit of pique, threw him against the wall or against her bedpost, or even, in some versions, into the fire. In that very instant, as the frog struck the surface, a miracle occurred. He transformed, no longer a slimy amphibian, but a handsome young prince with kind eyes. He explained that he had been cursed by a wicked witch, or sometimes a jealous fairy, and only the princess's not a kiss, as is commonly believed, could break the spell. The prince and princess then fell in love, married, and lived happily ever after. Or so the story goes, in its most familiar iteration. The tale you've just heard, with its specific elements of the golden ball, the well, the promise, and the transformative breaking of the spell, is closest to the version meticulously documented and published by the revered Brothers Grimm in their renowned 1,812 collection, Children's and Household Tales. Their version, Der Froschkönig, oder der Eiserne Heinrich, the Frog King, or Iron Henry, is widely considered the definitive modern telling. However, the fundamental narrativa human encountering an animal with supernatural abilities, a binding agreement, a transformation, and the joining of human and animal realms doesn't begin with 19th century German folklorists. In fact, by the time it reached these esteemed collectors, it was already incredibly, impossibly ancient indeed, a testament to its profound and enduring resonance across human history and culture. Folklorists, those dedicated scholars who meticulously collect, compare, and analyze the countless stories passed down through generations, have identified this story pattern as one of the most persistent and globally distributed in human history. It falls under the Arne Thompson-Euther (ATU) Index, a comprehensive system for classifying folktales by their recurring motifs, character archetypes, and plot elements. This particular story is categorized as ATU 440, the Frog King, or Iron Heinrich. There are countless known versions of this narrative, variations on this core transformative theme, scattered across the globe, from the nuanced oral traditions of European peasants to ancient tales found in parts of Asia, Africa, and beyond. Each version, while adapted to its unique cultural context, its local creatures, and its specific magical elements, invariably retains the same core ingredients: a human protagonist, an encounter with an animal or animal-like being, a promise or bargain, and a dramatic transformation that results in a union. And this leads us to the truly astonishing discovery of its age. While the precise origins of orally transmitted stories are inherently debated due to their fluid, evolving nature and lack of definitive written records, linguistic and comparative folkloric studies overwhelmingly suggest that the core elements and deep structural motifs of the Frog Prince tale are rooted in incredibly ancient Proto-Indo-European myths and folk narratives. This places its origins at least 500 years ago, potentially much earlier, reaching back into the late Neolithic or early Bronze Age. This means it predates the invention of writing, predates the construction of the Egyptian pyramids, predates the rise of the earliest Mesopotamian cities. It was being whispered around communal fires, likely as a profound spiritual narrative or a cautionary tale about respecting nature, long before the rise of classical Greek civilization, before the grandeur and might of the Roman Empire, before the spread of major world religions. It is a narrative passed by word of mouth across countless generations, carried through vast human migrations, through the rise and fall of ancient societies, through periods of immense societal upheaval and transformation, and across millennia. And somehow, impossibly, remarkably, it survived, adapting and shifting, yet retaining its transformative core. So, the crucial question then becomes, why does this specific, deeply symbolic pattern echo across so many cultures and so much time? What deep universal truths about human nature, about our relationship with the natural world, or about forgotten spiritual beliefs, are we truly remembering when we tell this story today? The answer lies in stripping away the comforting layers of later, more romanticized versions and looking at the older, more primal, and often more unsettling tellings. Let's begin by looking at the central figure, the frog. For modern audiences, a frog is a simple amphibian, perhaps cute or slimy. But in many ancient cultures, especially those connected to water and primal nature, frogs and toads held significant symbolic meaning. They were creatures of liminality, inhabiting both land and water, often associated with fertility, regeneration, rain, and the mysterious depths. In ancient Egypt, the goddess Heket, associated with childbirth and creation, was depicted with the head of a frog. In some indigenous traditions, frogs are seen as spirits of the rain, or guides to the underworld. More broadly, the frog in the story represents the animal world itself, wild, untamed, and possessing hidden powers beyond human understanding. The setting of the initial encounter is equally significant. An ancient, deep well. Wells and springs have been revered as sacred sites across almost all ancient cultures. They were seen as portals to the underworld, places where water, the source of life, emerged from the earth's mysterious depths. They were thought to be inhabited by spirits, deities, or magical beings. The princess losing her golden ball into this deep well is not just an accident. It is a symbolic descent, a loss of something precious, perhaps her carefree innocence, or her golden, untroubled world, into the mystical, primal realm of the sacred spring. The frog emerging from this sacred source immediately imbues it with a deeper, spiritual significance. It is not just any frog, it is a creature from the sacred depths, a messenger or even a manifestation of a spiritual power tied to that ancient place. This brings us to the core of the tale, the binding promise. The princess, driven by desperation, promises the frog companionship, shared meals, and shared sleep. Her initial disgust and subsequent attempt to break the promise highlight a profound ancient belief, the sanctity of an oath or a verbal contract. In many ancient societies, a spoken promise, particularly one made to a supernatural being or at a sacred site, like a well, carried immense spiritual weight. To break such a promise was not merely rude, it was a grave transgression against divine or natural law, risking dire consequences. The wise king, her father, plays a crucial role here, enforcing this ancient moral code. He is the voice of tradition, reminding her that a promise, once given, must be honored, regardless of her personal revulsion. This emphasizes that the story is not just about a princess's whims, but about fundamental societal and spiritual ethics. And then we come to the shocking climax of the grim version. The princess doesn't kiss the frog. She throws him against the wall. This violent act, seemingly cruel, is the true catalyst for transformation. This particular detail is often softened in modern retellings, replaced by the romantic kiss. But the older, more brutal act of throwing the frog against a hard surface, or even into the fire, points to a much older, more primal understanding of transformation through violence or ordeal. In many ancient initiation rites, a death or a violent act was necessary for rebirth. The shedding of an old skin, the breaking of a previous form, often came through a moment of shock, trauma, or intentional force. The impact of the frog hitting the wall can be seen as the symbolic breaking of the old skin, the shattering of the enchantment, allowing the true form to emerge. It's a literal and symbolic death of the animal form, preceding the birth of the human one. This leads us to the heart of the tale's ancient origins, shapeshifting and animal totemism. The idea of beings transforming from animal to human form, and vice versa, is a pervasive motif across nearly all ancient mythologies and indigenous belief systems. These were not mere flights of fancy. They reflected a deeply held worldview where the boundaries between human, animal, and spirit worlds were fluid and permeable. Animals were often seen as possessing spirits, wisdom, or even being manifestations of gods or ancestors. The frog prince is a classic example of an animal groom motif, being who appears in animal form, but is secretly human or divine. This motif often explores themes of marriage between different species, symbolizing the integration of wild and civilized natures, the recognition of inner worth beyond outward appearance, and the challenges of interspecies communication or respect. The frog prince, therefore, could be seen as an echo of ancient totemic beliefs, where certain animal species were deeply revered, seen as ancestors, spirit guides, or integral parts of a tribe's identity. Marrying an animal, even symbolically, could represent an alliance with the spirit of that animal, or the integration of its characteristics into the human realm. The prince being cursed into frog form might symbolize a temporary exile into the animal spirit world, from which he can only return through a specific ritual or act of acceptance from the human world. Furthermore, the story touches upon the initiation of a young woman into adulthood and marriage. The golden ball, a symbol of childhood and play, is lost. This loss precipitates the encounter with the frog, forcing the princess out of her naive self-centeredness. Her journey with the frog, her revulsion, and her eventual forced acceptance by her father's command represents a series of trials. The transformation of the frog into a prince then symbolizes not just the breaking of a magical curse, but the internal transformation of the princess herself. She learns patience, empathy, the importance of keeping promises, and perhaps, crucially, to see beyond superficial appearances. The ugly frog becomes a handsome prince, mirroring her own journey from a spoiled princess to a worthy bride. It's a symbolic lesson that true union requires looking beyond the surface, accepting the unconventional, and honoring commitments. The final union with the prince is a symbolic marriage, not just between two individuals, but between the human world and the wild, primal forces represented by the frog, a necessary integration for a complete existence. The element of Iron Henry in the Grimm version is also fascinating. Iron Henry is the loyal servant of the Frog King, whose heart was bound with 3 iron bands to prevent it from breaking from grief when his master was cursed. When the prince transforms, the iron bands around Henry's heart audibly burst, one by one. This detail, often omitted from modern retellings, underscores the profound emotional and psychological toll of the enchantment, not just on the prince but on those loyal to him. It adds a layer of emotional depth and symbolism to the breaking of the spell, signifying a release from long-held sorrow and tension, mirroring the prince's physical transformation. It suggests the curse affected more than just the prince's body. It burdened the hearts of those who loved him. So, when we look at the Frog Prince through this ancient primordial lens, it transforms from a simple children's story into a chilling, deeply resonant myth. It's a story about the universal reverence for sacred natural spaces, the profound power of spoken promises, the ancient belief in shapeshifting, and the transformative power of accepting the seemingly repulsive or unconventional. It's a tale that has survived for millennia because it speaks to fundamental human experiences, the transition from childhood to adulthood, the challenges of commitment, and the eternal process of discerning inner truth from outward appearance. The golden ball, the deep well, the croaking frog, the violent transformation, these are not just elements of a fanciful story but potent, enduring symbols encoded with ancient wisdom and visceral understandings of the world, passed down from a time when the boundaries between human and animal, material and spiritual, were far more fluid and terrifyingly real. Perhaps this tale isn't fiction at all, but a deep-seated memory, a haunting echo of a time when the world was a place of profound magic and dangerous spiritual contracts. And the wisest, most crucial lessons were those whispered from one generation to the next, disguised as a simple story about a princess and a frog. And if that thought has you looking at the pond by your house with new eyes, at the croaking inhabitants of the wild with a chilling new awareness, wait until you hear the truth behind other folklore stories.